footage questions with certainty. Maybe we never will. We'll probably debate them for decades. But more facts are always the first step toward establishing what the truth is. And finally, we have some more facts for you tonight. Yesterday, the English newspaper Daily Mail published never-before-seen body cam footage of George Floyd's arrest in Minneapolis. Now, by itself, the video proves nothing. Videos never do prove anything conclusively. But this one does suggest quite a bit. The footage begins with police officers confronting Floyd in his car, and from the start, it is clear this is not a typical law enforcement interaction. The officers ask Floyd to get out of the vehicle. Floyd refuses. Minutes later, police pull Floyd from his car and handcuff him. Here's a clip of what happens next.
Oh, ouchie,
What,
man.
are you on something right now?
No, nothing.
You act erratic. Let's go.
Yeah, man.
Let's go.
Yeah, man.
Are you on something right now? There's a reason the police officer asked that. It seems obvious that Floyd is in some kind of physical distress in the video, even before police manhandle him. And in fact, a later report showed that Floyd had a number of narcotics in his system, including more than enough fentanyl to die of an overdose. According to the autopsy, Floyd's blood contained 11 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl. The report then notes this, quote, signs associated with fentanyl toxicity include severe respiratory depression, seizures, hypertension, coma, and death. In fatalities from fentanyl, blood concentrations are variable and have been reported as low as 3 nanograms per milliliter. One of the best-known symptoms of fentanyl overdose, by the way, is shortness of breath. In the video, Floyd complains that he is having trouble breathing, famously, but he says that long before the police officer kneels on his neck. At one point, an officer remarks that Floyd has foam coming out of his mouth. Floyd is clearly struggling to walk. When police finally get him to the squad car, Floyd refuses to get inside. He says he's claustrophobic. Officers struggle to get him into the vehicle. Over to the vehicle, Floyd begins to scream. This goes on for about 10 minutes. Here's a clip of it.
My hands are hurt.
Down, please, man. Please don't do that. Take a seat. I'm going in. No, you're not. You gotta go in. Take a seat.
Grab a seat, man.
Man, y'all don't believe me, Mr. Officer.
Take a seat.
I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy, man.
Take a seat.
No, I'm a die here.
Take a
I'm
seat.
a die, man.
You get in the car.
In the front. Please.
No, you're not getting in the front.
I got the phone, Mr. Officer.
Get in the car.
Okay, man, okay. I'm not a bad guy, man.
Get in the car.
I'm not a bad guy. Man. Please, officer. Please,
Sit.
please.
Take a seat.
Please, man. Please. No,
Take a seat.
I can't choke. I can't breathe, officer. Please.
Fine.
You can decide for yourself what you think of that video, and we hope that you will. That's the whole point of having a news network, to bring you the facts and allow you to decide what they amount to. And we hope that takes place in this case. But you should know that everything you just saw happened before the cop famously kneeled on Floyd's neck. At one point, an officer tells George Floyd to calm down or he's going to have a heart attack. Floyd agrees with that, but he continues to resist. Ultimately, officers pull Floyd from his vehicle. He falls to the ground. And at this point in the video, you may begin to recognize what's happening because you've seen it before. The entire world has seen it before. That's the video that started months of riots at that point. So the question is, why haven't we seen the rest of the video until right now? The video seems relevant, particularly considering all that has happened next. And the answer to why we haven't seen it is simple, because Keith Ellison, he's the Attorney General in Minnesota, hid the video from the public. He refused to release the footage, and he admitted it.
I'm a firm believer in transparency and the public's right to know, but a higher priority for me is a successful prosecution. Therefore, I'll consult with our lead investigators and I'll say to them, when can we release this information to the public and still safeguard the prosecution? And if we can do it before then, I would have no problem with doing that. But I am reluctant to do anything that would undermine the prosecution of this case.
Right. I'm a firm believer in transparency and the public's right to know, says Keith Ellison. But apparently that's not true. Videos like this are released all the time by authorities. In this case, it was hidden. And in fact, if it weren't for leak to a foreign newspaper, we wouldn't have seen that video. But now that we have seen it, what can we conclude from it? Buck Sexton is host of the Buck Sexton Show. He joins us tonight. Buck, thanks so much for coming on. So before we get to why we haven't seen this before, and I think the reason is evident, what do you make of it? What do we learn?
Well, this is critical. We didn't have the full even video story of this, and as you've alluded to already, we obviously should have a long time ago. I'm not going to say that this exonerates Officer Chauvin. I think that's far too much here. There clearly could still be a finding of criminal. Right, I know, but criminal guilt with whether it's involuntary manslaughter. There are a whole host of charges he could still be guilty of here. But we do have to look at what was the run-up to this incident that then caused months of rioting. You have somebody who is, in NYPD parlance, an EDP, an emotionally disturbed person, someone who's clearly having either a panic attack or some kind of psychological episode, officers giving him lawful commands. What this takes away, Tucker, the thing that we do know is that it's a much tougher case now to make that there was any racist intent or even intent at all to kill this man based upon the events leading up to the video we've seen. That's what we do know, and that's a critical component of understanding what really transpired.
I think that's right. And I'm comfortable, and I think all of us living in a democracy should be comfortable with a system in which adult citizens can decide what they think based on all available evidence. But we haven't been able to assess all available evidence because it's been hidden from us. And that suggests, in fact, it's very clear, that we are being manipulated and cowed into accepting a very specific interpretation of events that has been used for political purposes. Why are we going along with this?
Well, because it was necessary for the narrative here. The BLM movement has been around before. This was really a restart of it at 2.0. And a lot of people that saw this, I think, initially wanted to use it for political purposes, and anything that would have caused even a little bit of sympathy. I mean, Officer Chauvin was roundly condemned by Democrats and Republicans across the country as a murderer, really, right away. Now, again, as you and I have both agreed, he may still be criminally guilty of homicide here. We have to see how the case transpires. But they ran with the narrative right away of a racist cop, part of a racist system, who murdered this man in cold blood with no provocation, with no underlying or mitigating circumstances leading to that use of force. That was a disservice to the truth. And Attorney General Ellison here for the state of Minnesota is saying that he wants a successful prosecution. He's supposed to want justice. And I think that that has been lost in all of this.
Yeah, they're lying to us. And again, people can decide, the jury can decide, but whenever people withhold facts from the public, whenever they lie to create
he's supposed to want justice. And I think that that has been lost in all of this.
Yeah, they're lying to us. And again, people can decide, the jury can decide, but whenever people withhold facts from the public, whenever they lie to create a storyline that is not rooted in truth but in myth for political purposes, the rest of us should demand that they stop. And yet we've rolled over completely. I mean, this is a longer conversation, but do you think at some point we're going to rethink how we respond to moments like this? When a tragedy is immediately leveraged for political gain, maybe the rest of us should say, hold on a second, I want all the facts before I weigh in.
I think the way this was set up, especially given a country that was already under psychological duress because of the COVID lockdowns and a lot of anger and frustration brewing, people exploited this right away. And if you tried to wait, Tucker, and this was true really for a lot of people in journalism as well, and I even think people who are good faith, they were essentially told, you either go along with this, with the narrative right away, or you're a racist. There was no grounds for, let's just wait for more facts. And that is dangerous, and that needs to change.
Yeah. Yeah, we shouldn't put up with that, ever. Buck Sexton, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tucker.
So a lot